So there's been a lot of discussion in the current meta about the center's role in your party, and with the most recent patch updates, many are saying that the center build should be phased out entirely. However, I'm here to show you that centers are not only viable, but can actually be the main carry for your party in certain build setups. But before we get into that, let's begin with the common attributes and abilities found in centers. Centers carve out their spot in the meta by focusing the majority of their development points into defense, with a relative lack of long-range attack power and mobility when compared to other classes. However, this shouldn't prevent you from drafting a center into your party, as their innate abilities, Dissuasion and Taunt, are some of the most broken in the game. Their first ability, Dissuasion, causes a low-level fear effect on opposing players. However, this debuff only applies if they're positioned near your team's basket. Their second ability, Taunt, aggroes opposing defenders when they are near the basket on offense. This opens up other lanes, allowing their carries to deal easy damage. These two abilities give centers the most crowd control out of any position, which has made them the centerpieces of the majority of parties since the introductory 19.46 patch. Now with over 50 centers to choose from, this list won't be comprehensive, but I'll try to mention some of the most popular builds so you can come to an informed decision when crafting your party. Starting with F tier, we have James Wiseman, who actually has some of the highest physical stats of the center class. His height allows him to disrupt some of the best melee style attackers, and allows him to punish smaller enemies on the offensive end. However, due to his relatively low intelligence stat, he will often miss position on the defensive end, allowing easy damage to your team's basket. This, in combination with a complete lack of unique abilities, means his usage in your party should be extremely limited. In my opinion, you should look to pay a slight premium for centers in the next tier, which can be found at almost any guild hall. In the D tier, we have Mason Plumlee. As I mentioned before, he will cost a slight premium compared to Wiseman, but makes up for it with a solid bump in stats across the board. However, he is still stuck in the awkward spot of not being fast enough to keep up with the small roguelike classes typically found in guards, while similarly being too small to stand up to the physicality of the larger center classes. Although, if your party happens to be in a tight spot, he can fill in without being completely outplayed by the enemy team. One level up, we begin to find real contributors to elite level parties, which is where we find Brook Lopez. All of the builds so far have had a serious lack of range-style attacks, which significantly limited their offensive capabilities. Brook Lopez, on the other hand, specializes in ranged attacks, cashing in 37% of his 3-point attempts last year. This makes him a perfect fit on teams with strong carries who can open up easy damage opportunities for him on the offensive end. And while he still struggles to guard against players' long-range attacks, he's a solid defender against even some of the most skilled melee-style attackers. In B tier, we start to have centers that not only contribute to elite teams, but need to be accounted for at all times on the offensive and defensive end, such as Jared Allen. Similarly to Wiseman, he boasts high physical stats, but couples this with our first unique ability on the list, Moxie. This ability boosts Allen's offensive and defensive stats for each consecutive dunk, making him one of the premier berserker builds in the league. Naturally, you should focus Allen's gameplay around delivering crushing offensive attacks, then sit back and watch as stacks of Moxie turn him into an unstoppable juggernaut on each end of the floor. When playing against Allen, be sure to focus on shutting him down early, because without his Moxie stacks, his potential as a late game carry is pretty limited. Moving on to A tier, we have Victor Wembanyama, and honestly, I could very easily see him jumping a tier in the next few patches. Simply put, Victor's height and physical stats allow him to dominate the vast majority of parties, even if he didn't have unique ball handling and range style attacks. And while those skills are surprisingly high for someone his size, he still relies heavily on sheer height when engaging the enemy team. This height allows him to elevate over even some of the strongest defenders in the NBA, and bypass their block radius to inflict easy damage. Unfortunately, Wembanyama lacks any unique passives due to his lack of XP. However, it's only a matter of time until he does, which will likely push him into the S tier category. And finally, it's time for the S tier. This is reserved for a build that epitomizes the center position, Nikola Jokic. Jokic is head and shoulders above any other player in utilizing the taunt ability. And no matter who you have in your party, Jokic will find his carries and put them in the best position to deal critical damage to the basket. And if you force him away from the basket, he'll punish you with elite level range attacks, passing, and off-ball movement. And that's all without mentioning his passive ability, Good as Gold, which completely negates other players' abilities when he's near the rim. Ultimate shot blocker near the basket, easy buckets. Pass disruptor aggroed onto him, perfect passing every time. The ability is so broken that many parties have given up trying to stop him, and simply resign themselves to inflicting damage faster than he can on the offensive end, where his relative lack of mobility can be exploited by some of the quicker builds. And that's our tier list. Thanks for watching, and if you're looking for someone to be on the list, don't worry, we'll have more videos coming out shortly. As always, please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the content.